Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikon here coming at you with another edition of the Cons Cast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Nioh 2. In case you guys weren't aware, there is a closed alpha going on right now on PlayStation 4. There is no way to opt into this alpha. There is no way to just go to the store and download a version of the game so that you can check it out for yourself because it is a closed alpha. There was a selection process, and if you were selected, you would have received an email on the same account that is associated with your PlayStation Network account. And in there would be a code that would allow you to download the alpha build of the game so that you could check it out for yourself. If however, like me, you are not lucky enough to get one of those codes, then you can't really play the game. However, I was lucky enough that the Ironbreakers have my back, and as such, Silly Cat provided me with her code so that I could check out the game, show it to you guys, tell you guys my opinions on it, and live stream it. I've also received offers from other Ironbreakers on Twitter that were volunteering their own codes should I want them to play the game myself. Well, I'm hooked up, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much for being as amazing as you are. But if you got those codes, punch them in right now. Go play the game. Check it out for yourselves. Anyways, let's get this started. What is Nioh 2 all about? Well, Nioh 2 is actually extremely similar to Nioh 1. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of videos out there that will be painting this as a negative thing. And I don't really think that it is necessarily a negative thing. It is just potentially not something that I personally wanted. Like, I wanted a bigger evolution than what Nioh 2 is bringing. But again, and I want to emphasize this, I'm not saying that what Nioh 2 is bringing is a bad thing. As a matter of fact, if you really, really like Nioh 1 and you want more of that, you're going to love Nioh 2 because that's exactly what they are doing, and that is not a bad thing, okay? It is just not something that everyone is going to watch, but the hardcore player base that Nioh has, I know, is going to love what Nioh 2 is offering. Now, usually I like to start these videos by talking about the visuals and the sounds and all of that stuff, but when it comes to Nioh 2, I really don't think that I need to touch up on that because essentially it feels, plays, and sounds just like Nioh 1. It looks just like Nioh 1. You know, there's a couple of improvements in graphical fidelity and whatnot. Some of the armor textures have a little bit more detail on them. Some of the weapons have more variety in the way that they actually look and the way that they appear in-game. There are some more unique models for some of those weapons, which is pretty cool. There are other improvements, which we will be touching up on, but from a visual fidelity standpoint, I think the game looks good. I think Nioh 1 looked good, and I think Nioh 2 looks a little bit better than Nioh 1, if just extremely similar to Nioh 1. From a level design standpoint, the levels also feel incredibly similar to Nioh 1. As a matter of fact, they also do the same thing where they reuse some of the levels in the Twilight version of those levels, and they replace all of the enemies that are in there with yokai, and you just kind of have to fight your way through the level, just chuck full of yokai, which is going to be considerably more challenging, but will also yield much greater rewards. Now, the alpha actually gave us access to 2 different levels and one of the Twilight Realms. The first level was a very basic level. It does have that design that kind of like you got shortcuts here, shortcuts there. You do have some verticality to it, which I like. I like the fact that these levels at least have some level of verticality and not everything is flat. It's very good because it gives you a lot of options as to which way you want to go. How do you want to approach each scenario? There are paths that allow you to circle behind enemies and do stuff like that. But yeah, the first level is the more simple level. You kill a bunch of enemies. At the end of it, there is a boss. Then you have the second level that they allowed you to go into, which is a little bit harder. It's got more leveled up enemies. It's also got a bunch of poison-like areas. And it has a pretty tough boss. Then when I got to that boss, I actually had to go back and farm for additional elixirs in order to do that fight. And after you kill that boss, then it unlocks the very first level, but the Twilight version of the first level. For those of you that do not know what it is, if you've never played Nioh 1 maybe, and you're like, what the hell is the Twilight version of a level? It's like this. In Nioh, there are different types of enemies. So let's just call them, there's the basic enemies, which are these humanoid enemies that you just fight, which are, they look just like humans. They got swords, they got axes, and they fight you just like a regular human. And then there's a different type of enemy, which is the yokai. The yokai are demonic-looking entities. They're basically demons. and they're considerably stronger than the regular enemies. The stamina system doesn't work quite the same way for them, and they're also able to like debuff you and they're basically much more challenging foes. And you will usually encounter them through regular levels, but you'll encounter them like a couple of yokai here and there. If you go into the Twilight version of a level, basically they replace every enemy in that level with a yokai. Sometimes you got, the lower yokai, which is like small imps or just, a couple of undead dudes running around. And there will also be plenty more of like the big, bulky yokai that will just completely destroy your face if you're not careful. So that is what the Twilight version of a level is. And those are the 3 levels that are available in the current alpha build of the game. And in all of those levels, you then get access to 2 bosses, because the one in the Twilight Realm is just a souped up version of the first boss that you actually fight in the game. So, it does give you quite a bit of content to play around. You can play that content for quite a few hours, particularly if you take into consideration that the loot is randomly generated, very much like Nioh 1. And if you want to min-max a character, you can spend quite a couple of hours in this demo. Like, my first gameplay session was like 4+ hours, and I didn't even finish everything. I still had like the full Twilight Realm to explore, and I didn't even kill the last boss in the second level in my first session. So then I had to do another session, which was like, I don't know, 2 more hours or so, where I just grinded a couple of levels to get through the second boss. So again, there's quite a few hours in this alpha, so if you have access, you should check it out. It will give you a good idea of what to expect from the final version. So one of the first things that you will notice is that Nioh 2 has character creation. Now, in Nioh 1, you played as William, and it was very much a set-in-stone character. In this Nioh, you will be able to create a character. We didn't get to play around with the character creator all that much because, they did show the options that were there, but you couldn't select those options. Instead, they gave us 3 different pre-made characters that you could pick from. However, you can also change the gender of your character this time around, so you can play as a female if you want. Now, one of the things that I do feel is important to bring up, I didn't play around too much with the character creator. Again, there is a lot of customizability. Like, there was this big friggin' list of stuff that you could customize, from hair, eyes, face, height, weight, all that stuff. You can customize the crap out of your character, okay? But one of the first things that I would like to bring up in terms of your character is that in this game, your character is going to be part demon. And the reason I feel it is important to bring that up is because one of the first mechanics that you will notice as you play through the game is that some yokai will now drop soul cores. Now, this is a new thing in this game. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Nioh, you basically would attune your character to a spirit, and that would give you like special powers with that specific spirit, and it will also give you access to living weapon, which in this game a lot of people are saying, oh my god, you can transform into a demon. It's the same mechanic as living weapon in Nioh 1. The difference is this time around, when you activate living weapon, besides the fancy animation, the spirit, the flaming weapon, your character will also transform into a demon. And the demon will differ depending on the spirit that you are using. It's not always the same demon. It is going to be a demon themed around the spirit that you have equipped. Now, when a yokai drops a soul core, like I said, and I believe that every yokai can drop their soul core, you can take that soul core back to shrines, Kodama dudes, all that stuff works just like Nioh 1. You can take the soul core back to a shrine, and when you do that, that soul core is going to be purified. And then you can attune that soul core into your spirit, and that is going to give you a new special attack for your character. This is one of the new mechanics, and why it is important to emphasize that it feels like a character is part demon, because he's able to, get the cores out of these demons and then equip these special attacks onto himself and actually transform into a demon in order to do those special attacks. Because after you equip the special attack, there's like a new gauge below the stamina. You guys will probably have noticed if you watched any gameplay at all, there's like your health gauge, there's your stamina gauge, and then below it there's another gauge. Let's just call that the demon gauge or whatever. And basically, as that fills up, that enables you to use these special attacks, which come from the souls of the soul cores of the yokai that dropped their soul core. These decks are pretty cool. They give you a lot of new variety in terms of builds that you can do and whatnot. Like, for instance, I killed an enemy that was basically like a one-legged monster with a big hammer, and that basically enabled me to do a special attack where I just bring down this huge hammer on top of enemies, and it also leaves this flame AoE in the ground. So it's actually a pretty beastly attack, and I tend to use it a lot, so you guys will most likely see that in the footage that you are watching right now. By the way, the background footage that you'll be watching this video is all of the Twilight Realm, so don't be surprised if you see me die a whole bunch, because the Twilight level was a little bit overtuned in my opinion. But either way, so you get the soul cores, you get the special attacks, you attune those with your spirit, and you get to use those special attacks. And it's pretty cool because some of the demons are quite unique. Like, some of them might even be stuff that you weren't expecting. Like, you guys remember the secret walls? I don't remember the actual name of them, but you guys do remember there were those secret walls, and you could like emote into them in Nioh 1. And if you did the correct emote, the wall would just bow down and leave and drop a bunch of loot for you and open up a new passage. If, however, you made a mistake, then the secret wall would beat the ever-living crap out of you. In this game, you can get a soul core from one of those secret walls, and then when you equip that, you can actually transform your character into the wall, and you can slam down on enemies. You guys probably saw that in the trailer, and that's pretty epic. Unfortunately, in the alpha, I was only able to do one slam, and I think that with that attack, you're supposed to be able to do like 3 slams, and I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I wasn't able to do more than 1 slam. But either way, that one was a pretty cool attack. The hammer attack's pretty cool. There's even an attack where you just transform into a flaming tornado and whirlwind around. You can transform into one of those round cats that you guys have seen in the trailer. I've seen that a lot of people really love the little cat balls. I'm not into cats. I'm not into that all that much. But you can get a soul core from one of those cats, and you can transform into one of them, and then you can just like roll as a giant cat ball into your enemies. So there are some that are ridiculous, there are some that are epic, but you will be able to use these special demonic attacks, and that is one of the new things. The other thing is that sometimes you will enter these demonic-looking areas, and again, this is one of the new mechanics in Nioh 2, where you will have to kill like one or a couple of the yokai inside that area in order to clear it up. And clearing up the area is going to weaken every yokai in that area, and the yokais responsible for the area being like all demonicked up and stuff, they're not going to respawn if you die and you go back in there. All of the yokai in that area will not respawn, at least the yokai that are linked to the curse in that area, which is pretty damn sweet in my opinion. However, like I said, it is a new mechanic. The way that it's going to work, you're going to enter them. Like, you guys remember in the previous game, you had certain areas which would have like a little AoE, and it would be all black and white, and usually you would approach that, a yokai would jump out. Well, the way that it works on this one is just like, there are those as well, but then there's just a big area, you enter it, and you just start seeing everything black and white, and then you have to go look for the yokai that are responsible for the corruption. While you are inside that corrupted area, your stamina is also going to be greatly reduced. So, I mean, your stamina regeneration is going to be greatly reduced, or should I say ki. Your ki regeneration is going to be greatly reduced, so you got to pay attention to that. But yeah, that is one of the new mechanics. You'll want to keep that in mind. Once you clear it up, everything clears up and you're free to proceed. Also, you won't be able to open chests, I think, while the area is cursed like that. And there are some things that will be walled off for you until you clear the curse. Sometimes it will not be just linked to yokai. Like in the second level, you actually have to destroy a statue that was cursing the entire place. So keep that in mind. It's not always yokai, you know. Your character also has a new special knife, and I don't believe that this was something that you had in the original Nioh, which is, you know, whenever you would stagger yokai, you would be able to exploit that. Like, you see the yokai falling to their knees, and as they fall to their knees, you can go in there and do like a critical attack. In this one, whenever you do a critical attack on a yokai, he pulls out this new special knife and he stabs them with it. So that knife is probably going to have some kind of special significance. But usually when you do the critical attacks or sneak attacks on regular enemies, he still uses the weapons that he has equipped as opposed to using that special knife. So that knife is definitely going to have some kind of special abilities. Also, when you enter these demonic corrupted areas that I talked about earlier, you'll see that your character has horns, which is why I said your character's like part demon or whatever. moving onwards, besides all these demon abilities, demon areas, all of that stuff, I keep saying demons. I really should be saying yokai more. I'm sorry for all of you hardcore Nioh players. I'm sorry if I keep saying demons. Just replace demon with yokai. Anyway, one of the new things that you guys will immediately notice just by watching the gameplay is that I am using a weapon type that was not available in the original Nioh, which is the dual hatchets. As a matter of fact, I did not play with any other weapon in the alpha. I only use dual hatchets, so all of the gameplay that you guys will see will be about the hatchets. And I've seen a lot of people ask, okay, but how many weapons are available? Well, in the demo, we only had 4 weapons available. It was the dual hatchets, the odachi, the sword, and the spear. And no, I don't think that the final version of the game is only going to have 4 weapons. There is no way, because the original game had way more, and then the DLC added even more. So my prediction, and again, I don't have any inside information on this, this is just what I think, but what I think is that they're going to look at what were the most popular weapons in the original Nioh. They're going to pick a couple of those popular weapons, they're going to bring them up to Nioh 2, and then they're going to scrap the least popular weapons, and they're going to bring up new weapons into the game. Maybe, or maybe they'll just bring all of the weapons and then add new ones on top of that. But that I think would be a little bit crazy, because that's a lot of weapons to balance around and do different abilities on and all of this stuff. But again, I don't know. The ones that you can be sure you're going to see in the game is the dual hatchets, odachi, sword, and spear. Odachi, for those of you who don't know what it is the weapon that became available on the first DLC, the big-ass katana, which had the moveset, which, if I remember correctly, you would actually swap into different stances just by doing the combos, which was pretty cool. I used that weapon in the first DLC to check it out. It was cool. Didn't like the tonfas all that much personally, but, you know, to each his own. Now, when it comes to the hatchets, I guess I can tell you guys a little bit more about them. The special thing about the hatchets is that they are super fast, dual weapons, but on top of it, you can throw them. They have certain combo moves that you can do, like in mid stance. If you finish your combo with a heavy attack, your character will jump in the air and throw a hatchet onto the ground. That deals more damage. You can also just charge up and throw 2 hatchets while in your mid stance. In low stance, you'll be able to like toss the hatchets. They'll deal less damage, but you can toss like more of them. And in high stance, you'll be able to actually charge up and throw 1 hatchet, but you get more distance with it. So there's a lot of throwing things on the hatchets. Mid stance also has like a special ability where you throw a hatchet to the ground, and if you hit an enemy with it, you're going to deal a lot of key damage, which is really good for breaking guard and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff about throwing the hatchets. They're very satisfying to use. I really like them, but they are a very close range weapon, despite the fact that, you know, you have the option to throw them. When you actually are getting into the fray, the reach of the hatchets is extremely limited. So keep that in mind, you know, whereas like I used to be a guy that played like axe and axe and spear. These are 2 weapons with a lot of reach, and trying to adapt to the dual hatchets playstyle, incredibly different. Okay, it's more in line with the tonfas, basically, if you like the tonfas. Personally, I didn't like the tonfas, but it's whatever. Either way, when it comes to skills, they have a different presentation on the skills. They actually went with the Path of Exile type of presentation, which I found to be somewhat unintuitive, because a lot of the skills that sometimes you would not think would be associated together end up being associated together. One of the examples that I have is, for instance, in Omnio Magic, I was trying to find the thing that increased your Omnio capacity, and that was like hidden behind wind element spells, and I was just like, why? You know, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. Maybe that's just me. If I remember correctly, in the original Nioh, you could just get the thing that like, hey, this increases your Omnio capacity. Get this if you want to have more Omnio capacity. Well, now you have to go down this skill tree, which again looks kind of like the skill tree in Path of Exile. And you have to go like, okay, I want to get the Wind Scrolls, which I don't need. Then I want to get this variation of the Wind Scrolls, which I don't need, so that I can go get this Omnio thing so that I can equip more spells, you know? So again, I feel like it was a weird thing, because some of the stuff doesn't seem to make as much sense as it did in Nioh 1. And considering that basically all of the skills that were present in Nioh 1 are pretty much present in Nioh 2, I don't see the need to like, oh, let's completely revamp the skill tree and then put the same skills in there. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I really don't understand why they chose to go with that thing. I would have preferred it, just keep it the way that it is in Nioh 1. I mean, you have so much stuff that looks like Nioh 1. And again, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Why did you have to change this specific thing if the way that it was done before actually was better, in my opinion, from what I've experienced of the game? But anyway, the other thing is, beyond the presentation, in the original Nioh, you had samurai points, which you would put into whatever weapon you wanted or into specific samurai skills. As a matter of fact, it was actually somewhat confusing in the original Nioh because you would put like certain samurai skills in the sword and they would propagate to all of the other weapons, for instance, which were like the skills that involved stance dancing, skills that involved your dodges, regenerating your ki. All of that stuff was, it was ubiquitous across all of the weapons. It's just you would still have to put it in a weapon tree. Well, now they separated all of that. Now there's samurai points for those skills that are specific and, there are ubiquitous across all weapons. And then if you're using hatchets, you're going to gain hatchet skill points. If you're using sword, you will gain sword skill points. And, depending on the different weapons that you are using, you will gain its specific skill points. So what does this mean? This means that unlike what you did in the original Nioh, where, for instance, I could play with just the axe and then farm up a bunch of skills and then put all of those skills into spears, you can't do that anymore. If you want to get spear points, you need to actually play with the spear. I mean, sure, you can find the locks and stuff that give you the skill points for the specific weapons, but you're not going to find like 100 locks. You're going to find like 1 or 2 as you clear the different levels, and you're going to need way more skill points if you want to actually invest in a specific weapon. So all that stuff is now separated. Same thing for ninjutsu, same thing for Omnio. It's like if you want to get more Omnio points, you better start, using more magic, and that will give you more points. You better start using more ninjutsu, and that will give you more points. Whether you like it or not, that's going to be up to each individual player. I'm just telling you how it works right now. Stats, on the other hand, work pretty much like they did in the previous game. You level up, you spend your Amrita, and you can, level up the different stats. Some stats will skill up your weapon of choice. In case you guys are curious, the dual hatchets scale with skill. So it was the same thing as the dual uchis, I want to say, and the Kusarigama, because it's a very fast weapon. So if you want to do dual hatchets, one that would be good to complement would be, Kusarigama or whatever. Maybe you don't want to min-max to that level just yet. It's going to be up to each player. But that is the way that it is going to work. And there is a new stat, however. At least I think there's a new stat. I don't remember a stat called Courage. I believe that previously you got your ki regen from mind. I'm not 100% sure if you just got ki from mind, because I remember it was like body and mind. Or was it a different stat? Either way, it doesn't matter. Basically, Courage is going to increase your ki regeneration, and it is also one of the bonus stats for the dual hatchets. Now, if you guys remember, in the original Nioh, you were able to summon up the spirits of dead players and fight them and occasionally get a bit of loot. As a matter of fact, that was actually a really good way to farm some loot if the players were properly equipped, particularly after you finished the game. You could usually fight the really well-equipped players' ghosts, and you could get a lot of the loot that they had acquired. This time around, not only you can summon those ghosts as hostiles, sometimes they will show up in your world as friendly NPCs, and you can summon them to basically help you out. It is going to cost you a Choco Cups, very much like you used to have to use in order to do multiplayer co-op, except you use the Choco Cups and you get yourself an NPC that will fight alongside you, and it is not controlled by another player, it is just controlled by AI. And it can make the game significantly easier, which is why I was confused when I started hearing a lot of people saying, oh man, Nioh 2 feels so much easier. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I haven't been using the friendly NPCs by choice, because you guys know I like to play through and, just go through solo the very first time that I'm tackling a challenge. And I was just hearing people say, oh, it's so easy. And I'm like, well, I guess if you keep summoning friendly NPCs, it can get significantly easier. So there you go. If you're struggling, you now have an option that is going to make things easier. But don't worry about it. I'm pretty sure that there will still be a lot of games media that will complain about how hard Nioh 2 is and think of the disabled and all of this other stuff. It's like, please, okay? Please, we've went down this road with Sekiro. Let's not go down this road ever again. That's all I'm going to say on that topic for now. But, there are options there that do make things significantly different. On top of you being able to summon friendly NPCs, co-op is still there. You will be able to engage in co-op with other players, and this time around you will be able to summon up to 2 players as opposed to just 1. I believe that the original Nioh only allowed you to summon 1 player. Well, the first time that I was summoned in this game, I entered a game, there was already another player there, which was helping out the host as well as the host himself. So there you go. You're going to have up to 3-player co-op, maybe even more. I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be invasions. I don't really remember doing a whole lot of PvP in the original Nioh. But, if there was PvP there, if there was invasions there, I guess you can expect to see that stuff happening in this one as well. And those are pretty much all of the new features that I've identified in my time with the closed alpha. Pretty much everything else works just like you would expect from the original Nioh. The fighting feels pretty much the same. The other weapons, I've just played around with them for a very tiny bit. Like I said, I focused all of my time on the dual hatchets because I wanted to get really good with the dual hatchets. But like the Odachi seems to have a very similar moveset with the Odachi and Nioh. Same thing for the katana sword, same thing for the spear. A lot of the skills that I saw on the skill tree itself were very much the same skills that you had in Nioh, right down to the exact same names, same effects. Like, for instance, you have the skill that you can dodge instead of doing a key pulse and still recover your key. You can swap stances during a key pulse in order to achieve the key pulse, as well as swap the stance. You can also get the stuff that allows you to do the special attack whenever you swap into a different stance. There's all of that stuff that you've seen in Nioh is most likely going to be in Nioh 2 with a couple of new additions as well. There were a lot of the passive skills for the hatchets, in case you guys are curious. You had one that increased the damage that you dealt passively if you had the hatchets equipped, and there was a bunch of skills that actually worked around you being below 30% health. So there was like passive skills that whenever you're below 30% health would increase your damage, passive skills that would decrease the damage you suffer, passive skills that would increase your ki regeneration, all when you were below 30% damage, which kind of reinforces the whole berserker type mentality playstyle, which is like, oh, I'm dying, now I'm gonna go really crazy. Like, that's kind of a lot of the passive abilities that you had with the hatchets, in case you guys were curious. Now, I already said that the level design feels very similar to the original Nioh. You can expect them to be doing the stuff where they reuse the same levels multiple times. So, like, you will see variations on, like, oh, now there's a rock here where it used to be open. And after you do the same level, like, 3 or 4 times with side quests, then there will also be the Twilight version of that level on top of it, where they replace all the NPCs by yokai. Like I said earlier, there's still tons of random loot. Like, just about as much loot as you got in Nioh 1, you're going to get just about as much in Nioh 2. And again, that is going to be a positive for some players and a negative for others. I'm just telling you like it is. There's also the crafting system, which works very much the same way. You can dismantle everything that you don't want, and you can use the crafting materials to craft stuff that you actually do care about. You can still donate stuff to the Kodamas at the shrine, which will also give you like elixirs and consumables and amrita and all of that stuff. You can sell stuff after the blacksmith if you need to actually get the other currency that I don't even remember what you use it for, the coins. So all of that stuff is still in there, down to the point where the menus are exactly the same that you had in Nioh 1. And just like in Nioh 1, there will also be a couple of deaths in the game, which will feel rather cheap because some enemies will just jump completely out of nowhere. There's no way for you to figure out that they are there, and it is going to be a trial and error in a lot of situations. In Nioh 2, I've seen that on plenty of occasions. I've even seen monsters throwing grenades from distances that I would just be like, what? I can't even hit you with my bow for full damage, and you're lobbing a grenade at me from that distance. There are those kinds of things that will happen for sure. And some players are like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Whereas other players are like, well, that was pretty cheap. So, depending on the type of player that you are, those things are going to be more or less frustrating. Very much like Nioh 1, you will also be able to farm bosses. So like, hey, this boss is really, really hard. Maybe I'll just go back and farm a little bit, level up some more, go up to the boss, beat the crap out of him. You can do that. Like, I actually did that in the alpha because I got to a boss, and I didn't even went to level up for the purpose of out-leveling the boss. I had to go back to get more elixirs because I was out of elixirs when I got to the boss. And I was like, well, Gotta go grind elixirs in order to keep playing. So I went to grind elixirs, and then the very next time I went there, I beat the boss in the first attempt. Ended up not even using elixirs at all because I ended up using the lifesteal magic because I was trying to save elixirs while I was farming them by using lifesteal, which was actually really, really effective. Lifesteal, overpowered as hell. I don't remember if I used lifesteal in the original Nioh, but goddamn, I'll tell you right now, Nioh 2, lifesteal is something that you should definitely consider for boss fights. Mega useful. You'll probably see me use it at some point in the gameplay in this video. But yeah, it's one of those things. If, like I said already probably at some point in this video, if you like the original Nioh, you're going to love this. However, for as much as I liked the original Nioh, I expected a bigger evolution on the franchise. And again, this is very much a personal thing and should not reflect on the quality of the game itself. These are two different things between what I wanted out of a franchise and what has been put in front of us. But if I could give an example that I know that a lot of people are not going to like, think about Monster Hunter, for instance. You got Monster Hunter Tri, Monster Hunter 4, and Monster Hunter Generations. And you will see that all of these games brought something new to the table, very similar to what Nioh 2 is doing. They changed a couple of the mechanics around. They added new things. So like, for instance, in 4, you got 2 new weapons that actually changed the game a little bit, as well as a new mechanic, the mounting mechanic. In Generations Ultimate, you got like the Hunter styles and Hunter arts, which again, changed the gameplay around a little bit. But ultimately, the biggest evolution in the franchise was the jump to Monster Hunter World. And whether you like it or not, because I know that there's a lot of Monster Hunter veterans that actually don't like Monster Hunter World, that is what I wanted. I wanted that big leap, which completely changed the game with the turf wars and the really open maps and all of the different interactions that you can have between the monsters, the different the quality of life changes that the game has seen. Like, that's what I would have liked to see in Nioh. An evolution like we had from Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate to Monster Hunter World. You know, I wanted a bigger leap. And again, some people are going to agree with that. Some people are going to disagree. I'm not trying to sway you either way. I'm letting you know what my personal expectation was and what we are getting. And I'm not saying that what we are getting is bad. I'm saying that what we are getting is not everything I wanted. And maybe I'm too demanding. Maybe you're right. At the same time, I still think that Nioh 2 is going to be a great game, and I know that at some point I'm going to play it. Whether or not it's going to be our release is going to depend on the release date, because my biggest concern is naturally Iceborne. Either way, thank you all very much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit up with a like button. If you did not like the video, if you don't like my friggin' face, hit the dislike button. Either way, if you guys are new here and you like the content that I'm working on, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. Comments and feedback in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.